Okay, I think I'm on a short leash, a short time period, so I'll start talking. My name is Susan Siegel. I'm a partner at West Roosevelt, which represents quite a few of the school districts here. For those of you who were at the WMAC meeting where I spoke about this, I apologize ahead of time. I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit, like you had to do when you're teaching in the classroom. But the basic message is the same. A month and a half ago, the Attorney General indicted one of your own, a superintendent of another school district, for actions that occurred while he was a superintendent at yet another school district. The indictment is based upon allegations that he authorized performance pay to his cabinet staff administrators and some professional development and some coaching pay. So I'm going to go through, could I have my clicker come up here, please? Go through some of this. You just can't get good health benefits, I'm going through some of these slides that'll help you see what the deal is and why it's a big deal. I will tell you that on Sunday this coming week, my son gets married, and I told George Graham at the Auditor General's office, thank you, because you're paying for the rehearsal dinner based upon these findings that just came down. So we start with ARS section 15502, the statute's there. Yes, it does say may, but in this case it is a shall, which basically says the governing board at any time may employ and fix the salaries and benefits of employees necessary for the succeeding year. That means board, not you. It means board. Some policies you already have, if you have ASBA policies, if you're not one of those rogue districts who has a board that wanted to do their own. But if you have ASBA policies, policy GCF, it's found under your staff certificate as professional staff, but it applies to all employees. You see the language is very broad, and it says the board has a legal responsibility of approving the employment of all attorneys. While this responsibility cannot be waived, the board assigns to you a duty to recruit, but it's the board that finally signs off and does the approval. Some of you are going to say right now in your heads, what's she talking about? Of course we take our contracts to the board. Of course we get board approval for everything. Well, keep listening. That was a teaser. So the Arizona Attorney General audited Apache Junction for the years 2012 to the Arizona Auditor General, 2012 to 2016. And as I said, they found that performance pay of administrators had been authorized by the superintendent without board approval. Professional development had been authorized by the superintendent without approval. Athletic event attendance, extra duties for athletic events had been authorized by the superintendent without board approval. You may say to me, how did this happen? And well, I understand he didn't benefit at all, and he did not. He paid $480 back, and the sum total of the amount is not extraordinary. I've had bigger cases when I was at the Attorney General's office and then also defending with dollar amounts. But the definition of theft is any amount where even if you don't have the benefit of it. So Chad has been charged with felony theft, class 2 felony. Now think about it. A superintendent has been charged for this, for class 2 felony. It's a little bit of an overkill in my own personal humble opinion. But nonetheless, he's had to hire his own attorney. Trust doesn't pay for that. His own attorney to represent him in this criminal proceeding. And criminal defense attorneys do not come cheap. He's also been charged with a class 4 felony for misuse of public funds. The Auditor General, and I highly recommend you consider having your board, after you get through this morass, adopt these policies. The Auditor General recommends conducting unannounced reviews of payroll records and existing control procedures to enforce and verify that the district pays employees only what the board approves. Secondly, modify your documents supporting employee compensation, such as schedules of employee salaries and benefits in personnel action request forms to include the board meeting approval date. Now, some of you were at the Guppy Mac presentation, and some of you have consulted with my partners, Rob Hawes and Jennifer McLennan, and you have had your board retroactively approve up to 7 years of past payments. This could be $1 million, $2 million a year, and I'll tell you what they are. So we've already talked about the indictment and what he was charged with. We'll go on to the next one. Okay, these are implications and areas for concern, and I'll click them off. And as I click them off, you may say, well, we're an elementary district, we don't have this, we don't do this, we don't pay extra performance pay for our principals or assistant supes. Here we go. Types of compensation you may be paying without board approval: tutoring, 6/5 contracts, stipends, travel and other, addenda, committee, and I list some of them that I love from my experience, club activities, hometown teachers, summer school, summer work. One district has something there where their teachers can, if they want to paint rooms over the summer for them. They have summer work, curriculum coach, master teacher, title funded activities. Pretty large amount. Now, before you run for the phone or drive yourself down to the sheriff's office, I'm going to give you a little bit of hope. I wanted to. Items you may already have board approval for, but don't realize it. For example, stipends pursuant to board approved policy where the pay amount is established. For example, doctoral stipends. What I found is there's coaching positions and there's coaching positions, and some coaching positions are not pursuant to a schedule. So if you have a schedule that the board has already approved, or a doctoral stipend, if everybody who has a doctorate gets $1,000 a year, and the board's already approved that, that's your approval. But if you have a coaching stipends that are all over the map, I don't know how. Sometimes those things go haywire. I know how it can happen. Then you are going to have to either get it all in line and get it approved, or approve each one as you go along. Mileage and travel pursuant to a board-approved schedule. Performance pay pursuant to a plan. So the first question I got was, oh my God, what about teacher performance pay? Well, has your board approved the plan like you're supposed to? Yes. Well, is the amount approved? Yes. Well, you're probably okay because the whole concept's been approved by the board. Now, you may not go through and say, well, Linda gets 1,000 and Jim gets 500 and all of that. But if it's pursuant to a schedule or criteria, the board's approved, okay. Performance pay and a contract. Supes, you all have, at least if any of my colleagues have drafted your contracts, you have performance pay in your contract. That was approved by the board. I hope your contract was approved by your board. And therefore, you're okay. Early retirement or longevity benefits pursuant to a board-approved policy. Well, if anybody has those or still has them, a lot of people have been abolishing, and that's kind of my recommendation. That's another topic, another day. If you have a policy that says you will get an extra stipend because you signed up for early retirement, whatever it is, and you're going to say, well, what about discretionary funds that our principals have? They can hire somebody back. That should go back to the board if you don't have it approved by the board in the first place. Okay, now we can go. Retroactive approval. Some people have gone back and had approval. I see some of you, I won't look at you so that you know that you've been proactive doing retroactive, and you've done retroactive approval of things that haven't been approved in the past. The statute of limitations for the felony is 7 years. And so some people are going back as far back as 7 years. Some people out of self-interest are saying, well, I've only been a superintendent for a year. I think I'll go back a year. But technically, if you can, it's a ton of work for your staff. Mark Eastlis at Alhambra just had his whole staff on it. He had 4 or 5 people. It took a lot of time and he didn't even have half the problems some other districts have. Again, the criminal statute of limitations is 7 years. Some of you have gone back 7 years, some of you have gone back 3 years. I just think you need to do something and show the Auditor General, if they come knocking, what is going on. I did ask, I said, well, why are we doing this to Chad? You know, I mean, this is really a little overkill. And of course, I used to be at the AG's office, but only in the civil side, not the criminal side. And I don't know what their thinking was, but I tell you what George told me. He said, this has been going on for a long time. We finally decided to put a stop to it, which tells me that this isn't going to be the only case. Now, again, it was egregious. It was a situation where his predecessor had the approval and the predecessor's predecessor had not. So he was going on to what his predecessor's predecessors did and not what his predecessor did. So in the report, which you have a copy of the audit report here, and you have a copy of the statute, in the report, it does point to the fact that he knew or should have known, plus it's in his policy. It's also in your policies. So stay out of jail, do what you can do. I don't think they're going to be looking for any targets in the near future if you try. I did call George, and I called him on several occasions, and I said, is it okay if these districts go back and retroactively approve? And he said yes. So, yeah.
So I was sending pictures of what you got up there to my finance person and my HR person, and they both asked me the same thing. So if you have a policy for excess sick leave that's been approved by the board, do you still need to take each individual person to the board?
No, if your policy's there and you're paying it on it, you pay it out. You're talking about paying it out on per diem. Yeah. I had one school district that had a policy where, but yes, if you had it approved. I had one school district in this scenario that has been paying accrued but unused vacation leave and sick leave at the end of the fiscal year. It makes sense. You know, you don't want to be hit if there's a mass exodus with this big amount of money, but the board had never approved it. So that went back to the board. But if your board has approved it, that's good.
Okay. And ours is whenever they hit the number.
Okay.
Okay.
What about changes in non-working paid days or vacation days or leave? Is that considered benefits? Is that considered money and have the same boundaries?
Yes.
Or all that has to be board approved?
Yes,
So
board approved. Change of days,
days.
yes. In fact, we just won a case for Scottsdale Unified. They changed between the time that they sent out contracts. They changed the number of days and they did approve it, but now then the teachers who had signed their contract sued and the court just dismissed that, thank God.
Can you have a class approval, like paying teachers extra time at a certain rate? If you approve their extra time at a certain rate, does that qualify as board approved?
The rate is approved, the people aren't approved. If your class of people is
Teachers.
okay, well, say, but let's go to, yeah, your teachers, you're fine if they're continuing, but not if they start, because you've got to hire them first and prove that. But what I'm talking about is tutors, for example, at XYZ Elementary School. Tutors, and you haven't approved the people that are going to tutor. Individual. And if you're afraid of what your agenda is going to look like, the AG has long approved, just like your vouchers, that you meet the open meeting law as long as that list is available 24 hours ahead of time before the meeting. So members of the public can go in and see what who's going to get to tutor this year or who's going to do homebound. All right. Am I on time?
You're doing great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna.
So we're all like, I think I have 12 more questions, but I don't know when they are. And I just sent all those pictures to my people and now I'm panicking. So, thank you for panicking us.
I'm sorry.
No, we really do need to stay abreast of it. We weren't sure if it was a single center of any of those potentially. Never before the grace of God going in, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just good to clean it up and you know what the Auditor General is looking like. The other idea, Tim Ogle, is legislative fix. And, yeah, I have a couple other ones too. That is a legislative fix that might allow you to delegate some things or might make it clearer. But right now, the statute, language of the statute makes it improvement.
Educational curve right here, wondering what we blindly accepted as different practices, effectively are gonna after this, that much show favor to the other.
Well, you've gone, yes, you are on an educational curve, and if you've taken steps to try to change it, yes, that's good. You know, there's so many different variations on the theme, Donnie, you know, your staff and me, you know, email me back. But if you show that you're trying to do this and you call your staff together and explain and find people that have not been approved, then you go forward. And some of you, I'm sorry, some of you, I know what it's like to be a superintendent. I mean, I work with a lot of you, and I know it's hard, and some of you inherit a situation, you just assume it's right. It's just like the practice of paying out unused leave at the end of the fiscal year. You know, maybe some of you inherited that, and you just assumed that the board had approved it sometime.
So the fuzziest part for me was more like the policies that give us permission to do it versus the isolated staff members. And I think that's what I got. ASA. It might need a little more guidance.
So you need those policies that allow you to do it, and then when you're appointing people to do those things, you need them.
Supposed to be. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
So foreign to me.
Thank you.
Is it okay to put this in?
He's been working on trying to get our attention on a superintendent's contract survey. I know that someone was filled out for ASA. I know this one is for ASA, and we work on, you know, targeting a little bit more closely the kinds of questions that might be more helpful to us as we contract renew. So, Robert?
Great, thank you, Don, I appreciate it, thank you, Mark. So, I'm gonna go through this, I've got about 10 minutes, just go over this quickly, but we won't take a lot of time. Essentially what's happened is for years, so Robert Young with one-to-one wealth strategies, plan member services, I own the financial center here for them. What's happened is for years, I've worked with dozens of superintendents. I don't work on their contract, I'm not an attorney. Here's what happens. When I'm doing retirement planning for someone, I need to have an idea of what your contract's gonna look like. And those of you that are very familiar with ASRS know that what happens as your contract goes up, your ASRS is gonna go up in the future. What we're trying to do is we're trying to project what your benefit's gonna be at whatever 80 points or 30 years, or whatever it might be. So we're sitting down, we're looking at things just like, well, what's your base contract? And then you have money that's being put into your 403B, into your 401A, and even a 457 plan. That's now, as of I think it was April of 2017, is considered now compensation, and ASRS has to come out of that. That was a big change that was made. Okay, we need to look at all those things, but also look at things like, hey, what about life insurance? What about things like car allowances? What's the average person getting? So essentially what's happened is I've looked at a number of the ASA studies, myself and Paul Stanton have taken some time to look through this stuff. And I know there was the national ASA sent out the survey. And I think there was a total of about 4 superintendents that filled that out from Arizona, because it must have been 50 pages, okay? Mark and I having a discussion about this and saying, we'd like to get this data together with the ASA so that you guys would have a resource to be able to go to get this information. Simple things like, well, you know, I have 450 people in my district. What is the average district, my size? What's the base compensation? What other compensation do they have? What are they getting for things like life insurance or car allowance? All those things. But the problem is there's no database. And what I've seen in the past is that superintendents calling themselves up and going, hey, Joe, what's your contract? Man, what do you, right? It's a little clunky, to say the least. And it also helps, for those of you that are in rural districts, you know, what we did in this, and I'm going to show you how the survey is going to look. We still have some tweaks to make to it. And any input that you have, I'll have my email up here. You're welcome to give me the input. And Mark and I will sit down and look at making changes on that. But we're simply going to look at the number of employees that you have in your district. Most districts are around a 10-to-1 ratio. So you have 700 employees, you're going to probably have somewhere around 7,000 kids in the district, okay? Something that came up recently is I was talking with the district and the superintendent had some health issues. And I said, hey, you know what? You're going to be retiring in your mid-50s. Do you know if your life insurance carries over? And he said, well, I don't know, let me check. Well, it was owned by the district. Okay, when it's owned by the district, that means when you leave, what happens to life insurance? It's gone. Okay, they're not going to continue. It's generally on a large contract, a group contract. So, you know, that was one of the many discussions that I had, like with ASA, for instance, about looking at that and saying, well, you know what, maybe people, when they're healthy, we can look at having life insurance that might be paid by the superintendent. It might be paid by the district. It could be a combination of both. But all of these benefits help. So let's take a look at this real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is a very small survey. All I wanted to show you, and you guys will actually get a copy that's sent to you once we have it finalized. I didn't think it came up this small. But the point here is that it's just 2 pages. It's not going to be 50 pages. And the more of you that fill this out, the better. Now, I'll tell you 2 main things that we did here. Let's stay in my circle here, right? Because we're live streaming. So 2 main things that we did. 1, we are not going to ask for your name anywhere in the survey. Okay? 2, we're not going to ask for the name of your district. We're not going to ask what city you're in. We're not going to ask what county you're in. What we want is completely, we want your data. We want to get that together. And all we want to do is be able to help out all of you to be able to get an idea of what contracts look like for something your size. So an example right here that we use is, let's say on this side over here, let me kind of get off to the side. You can see, in this case, we've moved it from districts from 1 to 100, 101 to 200, and so forth. So somebody could literally
That's
look
number of employees, right?
I'm sorry, that number of employees, correct. And they could look at this and they could say, well, you know, my district, I have about 1,100 employees, so they fall in this area. It's going to give you an idea. These are not actual numbers, okay? It's going to give you an idea of what's the total compensation, what's base compensation, what's the median, okay, what's the average, all those things. So now you'll have a database to go to be able to actually get this information. So you don't have to walk around and try to call your peers and find out what they're. Things like cost of living stipends. Seeing more and more that people, instead of going back to their board every 2 years and asking for a pay increase, are saying, let's just put a cost of living stipend in here, okay, or a cost of living adjustment in this thing. So it's commonly, we see something going at the max of 2%, or it's a minimum of 2%, or whatever the teachers get, whatever it might be. But let's just see what your peers are getting. Now, I understand one thing, and that is I do see outliers. Well, maybe I have 550 employees in my district, but my contract is higher than what this shows. Well, you may have certain situations in your particular district where that's what your board agrees to pay you, that's fine. But at least it's starting to give you an idea of what you're looking at. And there will be a lot more than this. Performance pay, how many people are getting performance pay, how does it work, what's the percentages, we'll have in there. There's quite a few more things that will be in here. A lot of people, I noticed in the national ASA survey, it asked, does your district contribute to your 401k? Did they contribute to your 457? Did they contribute to your 401a? And they even asked you to contribute to your 401k, which most districts cannot have. So what we're going to do is we're going to hone it down and just say, do they contribute to your retirement plan in any way outside of ASA? Okay. Do they contribute to your life insurance? Is it owned by you? Is it owned by them? How does this work? Now, last thing on here, here's my information. So if any of you want to put this on here, it's Robert. If you can see this, Robert at 121ws.com. If anybody has any information they would like to get to me to say, hey, you know what? Here's something we make sure you need to get. Here's something you need to get some information on. One of the things we did on the survey is we do have a spot at the bottom for comments, so they can add additional items that we may have missed in here. But we're trying to do, and I understand this is an evolution, is put together something that you can go to the ASA site on. You can look in there and you can say when you're ready to negotiate your contract, here's a general idea of where we're at. And when you go to your board, because this is important, they usually ask you, well, where are you getting that compensation from? Especially new superintendents if you're moving to a new district, right? This is something we talk about on a regular basis. Mark, any comments, anything you want to add?
Yeah, so this data will be on the ASA website, password protected, so you'll enter in as a member. Won't be identifiable, it'll be identifiable only by number of employees in the district. No county information, no district information, no names. Just size of district by number of employees. So obviously, you know, if the number of employees is 20,000, maybe that limits it to a few districts that are that large, but there's an awful lot of you who have 1,000, 1,500, 500, 600 employees. We're trying to make it helpful to you to know roughly how much money and benefits people in a similar sized district are making. So you can take anonymous data to your board and say, look, here's what people in my situation are making, regardless of whether they're rural, urban, or suburban. Because frankly, I think a lot of our rural soups are underpaid for what they're doing. Being a soup is being a soup. Everybody has the same problems and the same reports. So we're trying to level the playing field a little bit, give you just data stripped away from identifiable characteristics. And we're looking to do this and have it pretty well ready by the end of December.
Yep.
So at the beginning of the new year, when this starts to speed up, you will have some of this data available to you. We probably have time for one or two questions.
All right, good. All right, thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Donna?
Yeah,
Donna?
great. I know that you were thinking about preseason game, right?
Okay, well, that was good.
Yes, ma'am.
This is yours, right?
Warmed up for the type of things that we're gonna prioritize in our legislative agenda. I know that you guys are
You got two of them?
and there's
Okay.
the.
You got the,
What's prioritized, what's the strategy, so the intent here is to help us communicate in a single voice. We're working collectively with other alphas and making sure that the many organizations that support
Just put it on the
children
first slide, just
are going
hit
after
this, yeah.
some aligned goals.
There we go.
So, Mark, if I can thank you for all you
Okay,
do.
where's the
to help
slide?
the
You just
ASA
advance it by
be
clicking
a
there. You want right to the first
So
slide?
we are in the variety of
There's your, so you got this strip up there, imaginary strip. Are we? Yep.
Thank you, Donna. Give me time to get organized.
Great tie you're wearing, yeah.
Thank you. It's my best color of purple.
Right.
Nice to be with you all this morning. And as Donna introduced, we're moving towards a legislative session, which is always presents an opportunity to improve the work you do, provide additional funding, and and all of the other policy issues we get involved in. Let me focus on some financial priorities and proposals for this morning. Many of you are on our legislative group, and we've been talking to the legislative group about really 3 proposals that we'll be involved in.
Just click on.
And just to kind of move really quickly, I'll move on to the first proposal, and this is the opportunity weights proposal. And I rarely do PowerPoints to you because you've been tortured by many of them throughout your career. But I wanted to be able to talk about this in detail so I can answer your questions. So that last year there was a opportunity weights bill that was introduced to the legislature, and it didn't make it the distance. It went through the Senate, but not through the House, not through the budget. The Education Financial Reform Group has been working on this for quite a while. They've done a great job putting together a proposal that takes into consideration a lot of the criticisms they've heard in the past. And at the end of the day, if enacted, we'll put in place an element in state statute that will get money to districts that educate a larger portion of low-income students. And there's 15 different ways to do this, and everyone will have their different opinions. But EFRG's got great technical expertise, and they've thought through a lot of different elements, and they put together a pretty good proposal. Our legislative review group, late September, we reviewed a version of this, and they suggested that ASA support the proposal, work in partnership with EFRG to push this into the state budget and get some version of it enacted. So there's some updates since I presented it to many of you in Sedona and others of you at our legislative committee meeting late September. But just let me go through some basics here, and you'll notice some changes, but this is basically the concept. If you are at the school level, your district, you look at your school level qualification, students that qualify for free and reduced price lunch, and at the school level, if you've got schools between 35%, 56% free and reduced price lunch, you would start to qualify for opportunity funding, $100 per student. And as your basically the income stratification gets a lower income, the dollar amount per student increases to sort of recognize, at higher levels of poverty, there's more services that can be brought to bear to help kids start to achieve, or continue to achieve, and bridge some of those issues related to poverty. So this is what the program looks like for the first 3 years. Okay, so basically on income stratification, you qualify for certain amounts. Let me note there, because there was some criticism, the percentage amount went down to 34%. Or last time I presented it was more like 60% statewide average. So this brings it down. Many criticized that you didn't qualify for results based, and the income criteria was too high to get you in this, or too low to get you in this. Sort of you guys were the gap. Somebody said you're the gap. Okay, let me move to what happens in year 4. There's no way we get something through the legislature and run the gauntlet down there unless it has something in there that measures effect, performance, or something like that. There's just no way we run the gauntlet. The Arizona Chamber is very, very active down there. A little less so since Whitney left, but I'm joking. We're friends. But they are very active on that issue, as is the governor's office. And this is a $68 million program. I have not seen in a long time the legislature organized enough to push a $68 million anything through other than tax cuts in years. So you really need a governor's office to take a liking to this, or a broad coalition of legislators. Anyway, so that brings me to my point on some way of looking at growth, of student growth after this being in place for a number of years, and how EFRG has basically put this together is after year 3, your 4th year depends on how well you have showed growth for these students. And what they're thinking of is something that is, based on student growth percentiles by income stratification, these 3 income stratifications, and doing some sort of comparison, within the income stratification. And so if you're growing students at a high growth amount, you continue on at the high amount, but it tampers down depending on the growth you've been able to achieve. And that is basically after, you're comparing really year 3 results with year 2 baseline, because you got the program gets put in place year 1, you got to get organized, you got to hire people, and then you start, maybe get some growth here, and then by the end of year 3, that's actually middle of year 3, but that's how they have constructed the growth component. So it's not this would be fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, fiscal year 23, fiscal year 24 is where the sort of the growth criteria comes in. So, there's, a lot of questions on, okay, how's that going to work? How's that going to work? We all know the chaos that is the assessment situation, right now, and how growth will be included in the A through F system and how that can work. But that's the way this is put together at this, at this moment. So that is one proposal we would like to participate in the lobbying on and help push it through to the finish. Now, a lot can be said about the growth component, and I hope we have some time to get a better understanding of how that will actually work. So that's the opportunity weight proposal. Jesse?
Yeah, can I add a couple of questions, thoughts on that? So, one, obviously recognizing that we're one of, I think, 5 states currently which does not have some sort of weight for low income. Obviously, this is probably the first step in the direction we're going. I guess, has there been, 2 thoughts. One, I like that we're trying to add those weights. My concern is those weights are so significantly lower than what research shows makes an impact for those kids. I think it's going to create almost too high of an expectation on the impact of that funding. I don't know if that's been any conversation, and I guess maybe the only other piece to it, and I don't know if this has been part of the discussion, but when you get to that year 4, I agree with you, like, Legend's not going to go for it unless there's some sort of like what's the bang for our buck we're getting for it. The concern perhaps with having such a variance in terms of what could actually come with that, and again, I don't know if maybe there's a way to do some sort of calculation, say, hey, you can only go up or down by X%, but schools could have supports put in place to try and help those students, and then the next year have to pull it off, and it creates this cycle. I mean, I've seen this happen in other states where you get the money one year, then you don't get the money, and what happens is the student achievement follows that same pattern, but often. So I don't know if those come up or anything you want to say to those.
Well, I'll say a couple things. So I put these numbers up for illustration. They may change a little bit, depending on how the actual proposal evolves, but I wanted to be able to show you something on the board so we could have an educated conversation. So it may actually come down because it has to, it's going to be balanced against the fiscal constraints of the legislature is under 68. The way it's structured right now, it's a $68 million program. Yeah, you could, the research has showed that the poor, low-income children benefit the most from the infusion of funding into the system, but usually that funding comes as a big systematic reform where hundreds of millions of dollars are dumped into the place strategically into the system.
Yeah, so sorry, can I say one more thing to that too? So, and maybe if the price tag is the issue, start by being able to allocate resources to those who really need it most at this point. Again, the concern is with dollar amounts that low, the weights for low income funding are generally about 0.5. In other words, half of what a per pupil is in the state. So, like here in Arizona, you can talk about at least a couple $1,000.
So some of this is informed by some school improvement grants that some of the districts have gotten, where they've received maybe $140 per student to do some strategic things to drive achievement. And so those per student dollar amounts kind of inform some of this, and there are some other things too. But
what do you think the governor's office is? EFRG has been working with the governor's office to see where the governor's office could be on this in the context of a budget recommendation. And I mean, I'll leave it at that. I will give them a lot of credit in being able to get the governor's attention on things like this. Rebecca and I are meeting with the governor's folks on staff on Wednesday, and then Thursday with the budget director, to cover this and some other things. So I think it's something that the governor's office could get interested in and make it a part of their budget recommendation. And I think that's, I think that's a possibility.
So,
Roger, another.
I mean, just a couple things about this. One, year 4 lowers the total appropriation. High and low are relative terms. So all you do is take away from 300. Your 68 million automatically goes down. Because everything below high is less, and it's not 300 people. Right? Yeah. So what should happen is typical should be 3. High should be above 3. Low is below 3. Or you're gonna dramatically reduce the appropriation in year 4, which means less money going to high needs kids. If you have some above 3 and some below 3, theoretically high and low in social statistical measure will offset each other to keep the total net appropriation going. So I think it's unfair that kids in need have to have a growth adjustment, but reward schools don't have to show growth to continue doing the work. And the statute 241 says it's supposed to be based on growth, not on efficiency. So there's one. The other is the way scoring works. is your year 3 scores aren't known till the summer or the fall of year 4. So you have to be adjusting your budget and the appropriation in the middle of year 4, once you find out what your increase and reduction is. The scores really would have to be based on years 1 and 2, not 2 and 3. Because in year 3 is when you can calculate your growth in the middle of your budget setting process. So there's a calendar to it, it's not considered. You're gonna use 1, 2 after only a year's worth of implementation. People really need to consider the mechanics of the work that the board and the superintendent have to do with the development of this. And then you've got people hired in your appropriations, or you don't hire people. You just buy things.
Yeah, I mean, all fair criticisms, you know, of the proposal.
Typically when EFRG does this, they do a really good job on the front end of bringing things out and shopping it a little bit ahead of time, to kind of whet people's appetite. So I'm hoping they found a way to deal with the SEG issue. You know, if they've done that.
Yeah, they have. That, you know, it's separated. The SEG separate from this. Curtis, maybe?
How it works is you have to get the governor's ear first. Once you get that, then you have to sell the concept. What you're really looking for is a vehicle. So it might not be perfect, and it will not be perfect. You can assume that. And so if you can get it to become the new normal, then you have a new vehicle that you can put $4 in. But if you have to keep each year coming up with a new vehicle, then we waste all of our energy. So if this turns out to be the new vehicle that we can tweak and make, make it up, down and make it better, finally accomplish something, that you can actually get a vehicle that becomes the new normal. And this concept of A being law and B being for students, as we know, like trauma students or poverty students, that's good conversation. So we're heading in the right direction. Before we solve all the other problems around it, probably not. But it starts to give us a vehicle that focuses on activity. So I think it's headed in the right direction.
Paul chimes in, I just want to add that it was really neat to hear people who aren't necessarily going to benefit from this model say why this model is a good idea. So we just get in our head that we support the concept of ops, that might be the most helpful unified message. Paul?
Just to Jesse's point, I mean, obviously, you're obviously a lot of research in Arizona. The idea is that if we can match results based on things, get this concept going, just kind of say, obviously, then we can stop the parent trying to get the same for influences out of this. It's kind of basic concept. We're getting it to a point level. So appreciate it. We're going to try to get it in, and then, of course, we can move it to make it a permanent weight or something like that versus outside of the form of social justice criticism. Just trying to get a vehicle in. Of course, and the other thing for everybody, 3 years from now, because we had a lot of heavy discussion on what would the growth look like, et cetera. 3 years from now, we're hoping it'll be different. You know, right now it says I think it's going to be based on whatever the state board has. We know 3 years from now there'll be possibly different legislators, different folks that could help us with that. We spent a lot of time. I saw ASA spending a lot of time on legislative reform. We all agree. We're all just trying to get our foot in the door, try to move some dollars to help with the high.
Just to reiterate the same point, I think we just need to get the game with the conceptual idea. We're going to sit here and if we're not careful, take ourselves out of the game. We're talking about a rule of slides on this. There's a way to get in the game.
Okay, let's try to move them off of this stuff. We can talk endlessly on this.
So let's move forward with that. We can do all, I mean, we can sit here. Year 3, that's the new testing. So we got that product, we got this product. Let's get like Chris said in the game as an organization saying we know the impact of socioeconomics on test scores. We need to address that issue, and we can fight away with all the other pieces. It's never going to force it out of the gates. It's just getting clean.
All that on the grade level band. So that's good. Figure out that. So that's good. Okay, Paul, and then I know Mark's watching the clock here, so.
Just a real quick comment, that if there's any way to advocate to have an inflationary factor added each year, I mean, if this becomes institutionalized, it'll be a lot harder to add that later than 20 years from now. We're looking at like capital funding where it's 2019 funding.
Yeah, I mean, it does. Okay, so we'll leave that subject. I got all your comments. We'll work with the FRG to put this in place, and it creates a lever for future years to adjust the dollar amounts, and then maybe deal, with the out year, the issues with the out year, and how you measure growth and actually do that in a productive manner. Okay, next issue, special education. And I'll try to go real quick here. Special education, we tried to do something in special education last year. This year, we started in late July with Senator Allen on special education. We started out a couple meetings with her wanting to put all special education group B funding in an account at each district so that we only use that on special education. We took a couple meetings to show her that we use all that plus another 30–40% on special education. So thank you, Mason, and some others for helping analytically demonstrate that to Senator Allen. A couple more meetings, and we went through all sorts of broad reforms and things like that. At one of the last meetings in October, a couple of weeks ago, Senator Allen said at the end of the meeting after 2 hours, she goes, we really need to draft something and get something going. I'm feeling the deadline and pressure. Whoever wants to be involved in that, show up on Thursday, 2 days from that day, and we'll put something together. So we showed up that day, and as did a bunch of other groups, and put something together with her that she will run as legislation unless something changes. Now, I don't see Eric in the room, but I wanted he worked with us on something related to this, but he's not here. But, anyways, this is what it's worked out to be. Susie Canada represents the special education school administrators. She came and pitched this idea of putting $5 million every year into the Extraordinary Special Ed Cost Fund. That's not the federal money. That's a state fund created in 2000, never funded, that districts could access to pay for expensive special education students. And money we put there every year, and then we were going to work on what the guidelines say. Could you draw money every year for the same student at the time that student's in your district? Things like that. So that's one thing that will be included in this, allow independent education evaluations to be paid for out of this fund. Second piece, increase, we talked about a lot of the group B weights and whether, cost studies and things to bring them all up, complicated. The group from Florida, I forget what they're called, the Jeb Bush group out of Florida by Carl Phillips talked about it, changing the model substantially, things that would take way too long, and we all kind of gravitated towards an adjustment of the group B weight for mild disabilities. This is the one for the 0.003 weight for developmentally delayed children, emotional disabilities, specific learning disabilities, your mild situations, group B weights. This is, if you look in your district student count, this is by far the most frequent group B weight your students qualify for. You may have 10 times the students that qualify for this weight than any other weight. But adjusting this weight to a 0.12 statewide costs about $50 million. She agreed to make that part of the proposal, and then to work on something related to bus aids and monitors for special education students. Putting this together as a package, $55 million, $56, $57 million package. And so we're going to work with her on this proposal and see if it can be introduced as a bill, but she's also, Senator Allen's going to try to talk to the governor's office about this, and we will as well. So that's where we are in special ed. And then one other issue, unless anyone's got a quick question on special ed.
We're talking the cost study in that?
Cost study, it would be great to do a cost study. It needs to be done. We don't want them to slow us down while they wait for results of a cost study, things like that.
Well, the cost study preliminary looks like it's $460 million ticket, and then people just don't think they can help it. Yeah. So I think we need to do one chunk of comment here too, and I also would caution us not to use the word weight, W-E-I-G-T, with both proposals. Just use weight with special ed. If we're talking about the opportunity funding, and we're talking about the first proposal, just keep it as opportunity funding or cost. Don't mix up the language because the legislature might interpret it as, oh, we gave you increased weight money. And so we don't want to merge them.
Okay, last thing, district additional assistance. This is just, I reprinted the language in law right now about the restoration. And what we're hoping to do is, to get a full restoration this year. So we're 129 million from that level. And so that's, that would, if we're able to do that, that would accelerate it by a full 2 years. What they did last year is they accelerated 1 year. And in the way they put together the budget, that does something I won't get into, but there needs to be a full restoration, 129 million increment. And that's it for education finance, and we'll stop. We'll save you any education policy stuff for future time.
Rebecca, the silent star in the background, thank you both so much for all the work you're doing. Is there anything else you just want to quickly add, anybody? Because I know we have one more quick topic you want to do.
She's right here.
Great, okay, come on up then.
This is Whitney Marsh from the Arizona Board of Regents.
Thank you. Good morning. So I had a quick question, maybe not so quick, but I pinged Mark a couple weeks ago and asked him for recommendations on the process we currently ABOR currently does once a year to collect directory information from high schools to send information out to sophomores and juniors about financial aid, admissions, enrollment in the 3 public institutions in our state. And he said, why don't you just come to our meeting and ask the experts yourself. So right now we go directly ABOR. Instead of having the 3 ASU, U of A, NAU go directly to high schools themselves, ABOR gets the information and then shares it with the 3 institutions. We currently have a process in which we have an admin at ABOR who sends a request to every high school principal asking for a list of sophomores and juniors, the directory information, GPA, and class rank. We've had varying degrees of success in getting that information back. It comes in different formats, and knowing that it's likely most of those high schools are going to the district office to get that information back, we thought it might be more efficient. Good districts. Does that make sense to you? Should we be sending that request to the district office? Who should it be going to? Should it be going directly to the superintendent and CC someone else in the district office? We'd be sending it. Right now we send it in March. We thought maybe bumping that up to earlier in the year, possibly January, might give more time for the district to collect that information and send it to us. But really just looking for you for some guidance on this, trying to make it smoother, more efficient, and more successful.
What are your thoughts, those of you with high schools? My initial reaction was, don't send it directly to the principals. They might never get it back to you. Go to the districts. But then I thought, you're running districts. What do you think?
Yeah.
Thumbs up to the district office? What time of the year? Is March too late? Should it go earlier than March?
They need, what information do you need to have by then?
So we ask for a list, a class list for your sophomores and juniors that includes directory information, so the contact information, and their GPA and class rank.
You have GPA class rank?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's January or
Right.
March, it's still same year, it's the same data. I mean, you may not have GPAs in January, but take a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think we're expecting it's the final. It's really just to get an idea of what information to be sharing with those students.
What do you think, Doug?
In terms of
Earlier the better?
Yeah. I think that's kind of, and we're talking about sophomores and juniors. I'm not sure you're too worried about class rank when they're after their freshman year.
Yeah.
So.
Who do we send it to? because right now, every year, we have a couple of administrative assistants that comb through websites and try to make sure they have the most up-to-date contact or email address for a principal.
Too much turnover in principals.
The
Superintendent can then get it to
Get
someone.
it to the right person.
One more email.
There's some turnover in superintendents, but not as much as principals.
Well, if we can get it to the right person.
Right.
Any other thoughts on, so everybody agrees districts, superintendents. Inclination is January is better?